This meeting is now being recorded.
Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Jeremy Malarski from the Missouri Coalition of Children's Agencies, and this is our second webinar, kind of going over some of the outs and ins of our medication certification system. We will be recording this session. I know we don't have a big crowd today, and that's fine. That's why we record these sessions, and as soon as possible, we'll be uploading it to our website at e-mcca.org. I don't expect a very long meeting today, for the simple fact that we have about 5 or 6 different items to go over, but they're not big items. And also that, quite frankly, we are in the midst of preparing for our fall conference next week, so we're a little short on time. For those of you who are able to join us at our fall conference in Springfield at University Plaza, I'm looking forward to seeing you. And if you have not registered already, you can do so at our website, which is, again, is e-mcca.org. Excuse me. So I'll just go over some housekeeping items. We are using Global Meet software for this meeting, and hopefully it is displaying fine on your computers. Again, if not, we will be recording this and uploading it via YouTube to our website. So any computer that can play a YouTube clip should be able to watch any of these webinars. I am hoping to do these about once every other month, if not once a month, as time allows, simply to allow people to see how the system works, and what will be most valuable to me if I were, in the audience for this, is being able to ask questions as I see the interface being worked with. We have, I guess I'll start with probably the most important thing to empower y'all. We do have a manuals and guide page on emecca.org. Hopefully you're seeing it on your screen right now, and you can access it here on the right scroll bar anywhere on the site, Medication Certifications, Manuals, and Guides. I recommend that folks bookmark this page, and you'll notice that we have a number of instructional videos and print-friendly tutorials. I wanted to bring this up not just to call your attention to this page again, but also to call attention to the fact that this file here, the General Overview and Class Creation Guide, which once was called the Class Creation Walkthrough, is now a bit of a larger manual. This just got updated. So last week I were to get a couple more screenshots in here and particularly cover the part of the process where we check off on competencies, which I'll go over later in the webinar. Anyway, that has been updated. Another update to the guide is one common question we get is, what is my website? Every website in our system, such as this sample one right here, has the same structure. It's something.lmscheckout.com. An LMS checkout being one word. There's some kind of organizational code here for what I call the sandbox site or the teaching site. This site is not connected to any facility, is mcca.lmscheckout.com as an example. We use that to demonstrate things, but no classes are actually here. The new guide, and this is what I'm getting at, the new guide now has a table in it. It's like page 2 or page 3 that shows that lists every organization in the state of Missouri that works with us on medication certification and their website. So you can now go do the guide if you forget what your website address is. And that's kind of important. And everybody's username, by the way, should be your email address. And we'll go over recovering passwords and all that in a little bit. But I did want to call your attention to the fact that we continue to update this page and continue to update the guide and upload more videos. We really are keen on teaching people to fish rather than giving them fish. So that's there. And we love suggestions. If there's something that's not clear in the manual, small changes to large changes, we want to hear them. I just, for example, re-uploaded a couple screenshots because one of the nurse instructors was telling me that they're not in focus, and that's valid. And we want to have some good quality materials for y'all here. Okay, so I want to go over one of the things I want to start doing with these webinars is go over some of the questions that I have gotten since the last one. I think that keeps things relevant, and we can kind of expand on some of these questions, and they tend to be the more common pitfalls in our system, and admittedly there are some pitfalls. All right. So the first thing I want to bring your attention is the fact that we're dealing with what's called a web application. In other words, everything that we do in MedCert is done with a web browser. Web browsers, examples of web browsers include Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, and Firefox. And one thing that I have noticed, a question I get from particularly some of the newer nurse instructors, is where you're telling me where this button is and I don't see the button, and why don't I see the button? Well, and this is how it usually works: is somebody will be looking at an old class, and their browser will be super zoomed in like this, okay, by default. And they're like, well, where? And I'll tell them, well, you have to click on the plus sign, and they can't find the plus sign. Or I'm telling them you need to click on your class roster, and they can't find the class roster. And the reason why often they're not finding it is because your browser can zoom in and zoom out on any given web page, and you can also scroll around at a given web page. So in the case of Google Chrome, which is my preferred browser, the way you zoom in and zoom out, I zoom in and zoom out really, is you press the control key, and if you want to zoom out, you press the minus sign. And if you want to zoom in, you press the plus sign. And on my keyboard, by the way, the plus sign is actually you would have to click the shift. You had to press the shift key in order to really type it. But Google Chrome doesn't care. If I do control equal sign without hitting the shift, it still zooms in, which is good. Right. So in order to see an entire page, you sometimes will want to zoom out, is what I'm getting at. And also there's these scroll bars here on the left and right, on the right, excuse me, that allow you to see things. So to get to the main point, often if somebody is helping you with MedCert over the phone, like me, and you can't see the class roster button, you usually just need to scroll around, and it's there. And sometimes it looks weird if you're super zoomed in like it does now. You might just have to zoom out a little bit. And that's it. All right. And so again, if you're trying to follow the guide, or you're working with me over the phone, and you can't see a certain button or can't see a certain link, use your zoom buttons and use your scroll bar. And 9 times out of 10, heck, 99 times out of 100, you'll be able to see what we're talking about. It's just a matter of your browser being too far zoomed in, usually, or in some rare cases, I imagine, zoomed out. Any questions about that? Another housekeeping item, by the way, I'm sorry, I should have said this at the top of the webinar, is you'll note in Global Meet in the bottom left corner, there should be a chat window. Feel free to type any questions there. I don't think the audience is muted by default. Nope, just checked, it's not, so you can also unmute yourself and speak up if you have any questions. But the chat box works too. All right. So by far, I'll go to the next topic. By far, the most common issue with MedCert is emails, is student user emails in particular. So the way this process works, and this is just kind of the whole process in about 10 seconds, is you create a class. You add, if it's a new class, you usually have to create student accounts, or if it's a research class, you have those accounts already on your site, and then you add those students to a class, and then the student usually gets an email, particularly if they're a first-time user, they get an email saying that you have something to the effect of you have an account on on an LMS site. Here's a link for you to set your password, because the system doesn't really create a password for that person. It makes that person log in and create one. And the real wrinkle here is that you have to have a valid email address. And by far, the most common day-to-day problem we have in the MedCert system is students aren't getting those. Students don't get those emails for whatever reason. The most common reason is someone's email address is spelled incorrectly, or their email account is looking for spam, and they see an email from noreply@lmscheckout.com. This is their email client, and it blocks that email because it thinks noreply@lmscheckout.com is a spammer, is a spam email account. So the way to get around that, those two things, is number one, make sure your students' emails are spelled correctly. Make sure they're able to receive messages. And if the student hasn't received an email in, say, 15 minutes after creating the account, then have them check their junk mail folders. This can be very inconvenient. I do realize that. But this unfortunately, most web systems, if you have an account, if you have user accounts, that is the modern way of doing it, because without an email address, you don't have kind of a unique identifier to identify that person, and you don't have a way of making sure that it is that person. So to get back to what my original intended point was, very often students will not get those emails, and they need to have another email sent to them to reset their password. Because again, every person's username, when you're logging into your site, every person's username is their email address. So you don't have to memorize a username. You do have to have a password or set one. So what you can do for your students is, if you can find them on this list, and I've just gone to users and groups and users, and you find them on this list, and expand the record, and then you can click this link that says password reset. And click that password reset button, and you'll get a little success message like I just did there. And what has happened is, this is a fake account, but what will happen is that person will get an email from, again, noreply@lmscheckout.com, and that will have instructions on how they can set their password and log into the site. And specifically, it'll be a link that allows them to do that. So this is one way nurse instructors can help students get password reset emails. There is a second thing that students can actually do, and that is to go here. So you go to your LMS site. This is our Sandbox One NECA. You click Login, and then underneath the login form is this link called Forgot Password. And any student can do this. They can go to the site /user/forgot password, and then type in their email address here and submit it. And that will do the same thing. That'll have the exact same effect as what we just covered in, when the nurse administrator clicks password reset. It will try to send an email address. It will try to send an email, to that email address that has password reset instructions. Beyond that, if all that fails, then do contact me, and there are like one or two other workarounds to do that. But number one, make sure your email addresses are spelled right. Number two, make sure your students are checking their spam and junk folders. And three, reset the passwords yourself using one of two methods that I just described. And 9 times out of 10, that solves it. that's the long and short of it. Okay. All right. Any questions about password resetting before we move on to the next topic? All right, very good. Okay, so the next thing I want to go over is checking expiration dates. The preferred way to check a student's expiration date is to go to Reports and Certifications. And you will see this table with every student who has been certified on your site. One thing you might notice is that each name has a plus sign by them. Now, we went over this, I think, in the first webinar, but I'll just go over it again. There is a bit of a wrinkle in the system in that it is designed to, by default, show the expiration date that is about to happen soonest. So conceivably, that could be misleading because if, let's take this student, Mary Tyler Moore. Let's suppose, for the sake of discussion, today is July 17th. Let's say Mary passed her recert exam yesterday on the 16th, and she expired yesterday on the 16th. This might cause a little bit of concern because it shows that she's expired even though you recerted her yesterday. Well, the thing to remember is that these are just summaries, and just like with the class page, you can expand the record to get more information and click the plus sign by the student's name. And sometimes, if they were just recertified, you'll see the correct expiration date here, but you got to expand the student record. And same principle as before, by the way, with zooming and scrolling. And sometimes we've gotten calls from people who have their browser set like this, like super zoomed in, and they don't see everything. You want to scroll around and you want to zoom out. You want to use your browser to display all the information. And in the case of student expiration dates, that means clicking the plus sign by the student's name, and sometimes that might mean zooming out a little bit or scrolling around a little bit. You know, every browser you can zoom in with the Control plus, zoom out with Control minus, and scroll around with the bar on the right. Okay. All right. Now, the next topic is probably the most important topic I will cover today, and that is checking off on competencies. So I don't know if I'll need to create a class to demonstrate this. I don't think I will, so I'll just go ahead and try demonstrating without demonstrating this on an old class. So the way, as I'm sure I'm telling you stuff you already know at this point, but the way the MedCert process works outside of the website is you teach a class. It's usually an 8-hour class if they're initial certification students. It's a 2-hour class if they're recertification students. In the case of initial certification students only, they take an online exam, and then they demonstrate competencies. And they have to finish that part in order to actually be certified. And recertification students have to also demonstrate competencies after their 2-hour class. So a lot of times we have had some particularly newer nurse instructors who skip that last part accidentally because their students pass the exam and then they think they're done. Well, they're not. You are not completely done with a MedCert class until the competencies are checked. So let's pretend this is actually me. Let's pretend that I have passed my MedCert exam. Let's say I passed it barely. Okay, and the class roster should look like this. Again, I'm not done until I check this box. Until I demonstrate competencies, then my nurse instructor checks this box and I save changes. This is, again, critically important because whereas NECA staff, mostly me at this point, NECA staff can check whether a student really took the online exam. And we can check when the student took the online exam. We can check when the student signed in. We can do all these verification processes behind the scenes. The one major thing we cannot do is we don't know whether that student demonstrated competencies to you. Furthermore, we're not nurses. And it's good because I shouldn't be a nurse. But we're not nurses, and we don't have the authority under Missouri state regulations to attest that someone completed their competencies. So while on the surface this looks like you're just checking a box on a web form, it's actually carries a lot more weight than that. It's you are attesting that student has completed the entire process as a Missouri nurse. So you have to remember to check these boxes and save changes, and that will effectively certify the student. That will record that student as being certified in our system. If you don't, I can't check the box for you. And we did have a case in the last month, unfortunately, where there was a class a little less than a year ago. Our new system had been up for a couple of months, of 9 students, and those 9 students passed the exam. And they probably demonstrated competencies to their nurse, but their nurse did not check off on competencies for that class. And having no attestment from a nurse that those students completed competencies, I can't verify whether they were certified. So their certification was effectively not recorded, and they were not certified, and they were not officially certified under Missouri rules. So so the organization had to track, and that nurse instructor, by the way, left that organization by the time this problem was discovered. We had a student come back and ask for a copy of the certificate, and we couldn't give it to him. And they had to track down that nurse. They had to track down that nurse. That nurse had left that organization and went to another one. Thank goodness they could. But it can be a big problem. What I've been trying to do is for classes that are complete, that for people that test that week, and we get the invoices for when people test, I'm trying to find some time to carve out some time to go through those classes and make sure the competencies were checked. And if they're not checked, I check with the nurse and see if they just haven't been able to get to the competencies part of their course, or whether they forgot. Because if they forgot and then they left the organization, there's no record of that student completing competencies, we can be stuck. It can be a big problem. So I can't emphasize enough the competency part of this process, and the best way to do that is to check competencies completed. There's one more step in this process that I want to kind of demonstrate. So I checked this. So again, fictional student Jeremy Malarski completed his test, demonstrated competencies. I'm attesting as a fake nurse on this fake site that he did that. Again, I'm only doing this because it's the Mecca Sandbox site, and we all know this is not real. But I really legally cannot do this on another site technically. I save changes. All right, so this fictional student is certified. Now I want to just double check for sure that that went through. So I go to report certifications, search for my student, make sure that the expiration date is 14 months from now, which it is. Okay. Oh, and notice that the a previous expiration date appears by default, but with the expanded record, I can see the real one. I can see the one that is the one I just certified. All right. Okay. I have 2 more things to cover, so we're probably going to come in just under a half hour today. One is we had in the last month we did have another issue where a nurse instructor was using a tablet device. And unfortunately, that is not preferred. So this site that we're using, LMS Checkout, excuse me, I clicked the wrong place. It works. It is not designed for smartphones. It is not designed for tablets, and particularly this part of the process here. For those of you who are a little more experienced. This part of the process where it lists every student on the site, and you can add them or remove them from your class. This tends to break when people are doing this on a smartphone. When people are doing this on a smartphone or a tablet, this, for whatever reason, this part of the class creation process works the least reliably. And unfortunately, we had an issue where the nurse accidentally added like 14 students she didn't mean to. Because she called us right away, we were able to fix that. but that can be a problem because we're charged. MECA is charged by our vendor based on the number of student accounts we have. It can be very difficult to reverse the process once someone's been added, particularly if it's been a couple days. But bottom line is, smartphones are great, but not for MedCert. The website just doesn't really support them very well, unfortunately. And hopefully that'll change in the future. But for now, we do prefer that you use a desktop or a laptop computer with a modern web browser, like Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, or Firefox. All right, and then the last thing I have to go over is this was covered in the last MedCert tip. Unfortunately, we did have a staffing change, and at this time, Jeanette Chalfon is no longer with MECA. So all MedCert-related inquiries can come to me for now. My email address is jeremy@emeca.org. Why don't I, go ahead and type that into the chat box. Hopefully that'll display for you guys. jeremy@emeca.org. You can also get materials here on our manuals and guides page. But again, if there's something we haven't covered, then please let us know, and we would love to have it up there. All right. If there are no questions, I hope if you're watching this via YouTube, or if you're here today, again, I hope to see you or some of your colleagues at the MECA Fall Conference next week. If you have any questions about MedCert or MECA in general, please let us know. We appreciate your use of our system, and we appreciate your service to the children of Missouri.